Hello, Legal Academia. My name is Samannaran Upadhyay. I am Assistant Professor of Law in the Department of Legal Studies at Sant Gehra Guru University, Sarguja, Ambikapur, Chhattisgarh. In this video lecture, I will take up briefly introduction of human rights. In this video lecture, I would endeavor to make clear some misconception about the human rights, what it has been regularly talked about, and its a real form which is uh, in existence in the international legal documents as well as the national legal documents, which you also call as municipal legal documents. So, dear friends, let us begin with our lecture. Here, first and foremost, let me inform you that human rights are set of principles which are concerned with the equality and fairness. These rights are conforming equality to every person irrespective of his or her race, religion, caste, sex, place of birth, place of origin, whatever, geographical or the biological or the some other kind of the distinctions may be there. And it is important to recognize all the human beings equal for the sake of the humanity on the same uh, in the similar vein, fairness is also important, because until and unless fairness is not addressed by the government institutions, it cannot be said that the people have been set to some sort of the equality which is sought by the concept of the human rights. All these principles are required to recognize freedom of the persons to make their choices about their lives, to develop their own potential, being a human being. And these human rights are about living a life free from fear, harassment, or discrimination. As I have written here, anybody can read it. But let us take you to its another introductory part, that what are the origins of the human rights. As far as meaning of the human right is concerned, I am not dealing that particular issue, because that has to be dealt by me in other lectures, video lectures, when I would be preparing video lectures on the meaning of the human rights from the perspective of its jurisprudential aspect, and from the aspect of international legal documents as well as the municipal documents. Thereunder, I would discuss in detail the meaning of the human rights. So, dear friends, I am leaving the meaning of the human rights here. But let me tell you that human rights are supposed to be possessed by human beings. Means, to have human rights, there should be a bearer of the right in the form of the human. If that is not a human, that cannot be holder of the rights. And those rights also should be exercisable rights, not only for the namesake. So, with this brief introduction of the human rights, let me inform you about the origins of the human rights. If you look at the theological teachings from Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, Jainism, Buddhism, uh, Jews, everywhere we will find that the teachings of all these religions have always addressed as well as informed the people to have some sort of the ethics, some rationality of justice in order to maintain the dignity. So, the foundations or the basis of human rights are in existence in all these theological teachings, but they are in a very scattered form, and they are not uh, filtered in the form of the human rights as we are seeing today. So, let us take the instances from where the human rights have come into the crystal form from its rudimentary structure. That has happened on 15th June 1215 when in England Borans were succeeded to compel the king to sign the Magna Carta in the form of endorsing the rights of the citizens against the king. Everybody knows that what had been addressed in true form in the Magna Carta, that was the Boran's denial to pay the king's heavy duties or the taxes unless and until the king is not going to address their reasons. So here the king considered with the demand of the Borans and signed the Magna Carta and acknowledged inter alia given right to the persons to sue the king and the king's person in the event of habeas corpus or in the case of the free trial, demand of the free trial. In the similar vein, the American Declaration of Independence 1776 endorses the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a fundamental right of all the people. It was again a demand in the American continent and happened to be a reality in the American Constitution, which was again followed up by the French people under the French Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, wherein the people demanded to have some certain rights to the individuals in form of the liberty, equality, and fraternity, which could be exercised and enforced against the arbitrary power of the king and king persons. Dear friends, in the similar vein, United States Bill of Rights 1791 has also recognized the freedom of speech, religion, and the press, as well as the right to peaceable assembly, private property, and a fair trial. But all these things happened during all those 16th, 17th, and 18th century. But in 19th century and 20th century, many more things had happened in the form of the socio-economic political revolts, as well as the demand for the societal reform, uniformly applicable to all without any geographical boundaries, and that has taken place in the form of the UDHR. Rather, before to UDHR, there had been UN Charter wherein the human rights had been addressed under its Article 1, Clause 3, Article 13, Article 22, Article 55, 56, 76, Clause C. All these things are there wherein the human rights have been addressed. But before to that one, the humanity of the world had witnessed massacre to the humanity arising out of the first and second world war. So before the second world war could have completed, US president Roosevelt in 1941 has proclaimed four freedoms of the person, that every people, he or she may be anywhere in the world, shall enjoy freedom of speech and freedom of belief, freedom from want and fear. And all these have been endorsed by the unitedly at the global level. So, origin of the human rights in modern context has started with the UN Charter 1945. As I told you, the particular articles of this UN Charter, which we will take up in another subject lecture also. Thereafter, there had happened to be proclamation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations General Assembly in 1945, 1948. Then International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1966, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights 1966, and additional protocols to ICCPR and ICESCR. These are the from UDHR to additional protocols to the ICCPR and ICESCR, has formed the Human Rights Bill. In addition to above mentioned international human rights document or instruments, there had been certain regional human rights endorsements or the legal documents. For the European continent, the European uh, countries have enacted the European Convention on Human Rights. For the American continent, American countries have adopted the American Convention on of Human Rights. Then, for the African continent, there had been consensus to have the African Charter on Rights of Human and People. So these are the original human rights documents. So, dear friends, let us understand that what rights are being covered by the human rights. If we go in detail to all these international as well as the regional human rights documents, we will find that there are number of the human rights and they could be classified or categorized in five categories of the human rights. First is the civil rights, second is political, then economic, then social, then cultural rights. And what is in civil rights? In fact, the civil and political rights, they are forming the first generation of human rights, as Karel Vasak has categorized the generations of human rights, because these civil and political rights are a guarantee to the people against the tyrannical power of the state. Means the state could not abrogate or take away or cut down their human rights. It is necessary for their subsistence. Then comes the second generation of human rights. Thereunder, there are economic, social, and cultural rights. For example, right to education, right to food, right to social security, right to housing, right to medical facility. All these things are coming under the economic, social, and cultural rights. So all these rights have been categorized by Karl Vesak under the second generation of human rights, and these are the affirmative human rights for which the state has to take certain actions in order to make it fully usable, as well as usable. In saying that usable, I mean to say that to make it abundant or available to the all humans, so that they can use all these human rights in order to to the fullest extent, in order to make their life a quality life or a better life. And third generation of human rights, as Karel Vasak has commented that these are the group rights, or the bargaining rights, or the collective rights. There under number of the human rights are coming. For example, right to clean and healthy environment, right to development, right to solidarity, right to self-help groupness. All these things are coming under the third generation of human rights. And here, the people are demanding to the state to guarantee their collective rights, because these are not the isolated; they are directed to the group of the people. Dear friends, who are responsible to protect the human rights? Of course, it is the state whose responsibility is to protect the human rights of all the persons within its state. And since human rights are universal in nature, they are inalienable, they are inseparable, and they are non-derogable to the to certain extent. So, it's the responsibility of the state to protect and promote the human rights of all the individuals without any discrimination who are within their territory, irrespective of the fact that from which nationality they belong. And non-state actors are also responsible, because if you go through all these international as well as the regional human rights documents, you will find that in addition to making state responsible for the purpose of protection and promotion of these human rights, non-state actors, including the individuals, have also been made responsible to respect the human rights of the others and not to violate them at their own choices. And dear friends, here let me take you to the last slide. In fact, can anybody take away human rights which we hold? So let me be very frank and inform you that no one can take away your human rights without the procedure established by law. And this procedure established by law should be a due process of law. Means even though a person who is perpetrator or guilty of any crime, if or if a person under the civil or criminal liability is there, even though in that situation, neither the non-state actors nor the state actors take away his or her human rights, be it the taking of his life, means putting that fellow to the death sentence, that is the capital punishment, or putting that person behind the bars for life imprisonment, or imposing certain penalty upon that person without providing the without exercising the due process of law, which requires the good amount or a great opportunity to the person accused of that civil or criminal liability to defend himself in a proper way which can be understandable by every person, means by a prudent person. Even though the person who is behind the bars have certain rights, certain human rights, that is the prisoner's rights, they should not be set to the atrocities, prison atrocities, or any kind of miseries. So dear friends, no one can take away your human rights without the procedure established by law, that is also called as the due process of law. So in this video lecture, I had one objective to inform you about the basics of the human rights. Means I wanted to inform you a little bit about the human rights. In detail, I would take up the meaning of the human rights from its jurisprudential aspects in my next video lecture. So dear friends, till then enjoy my video and thank you.